"I'll give you $20 million if you translate this," joked the billionaire. But the poor boy silenced him. The laughter came first sharp polished, echoing off glass walls and marble floors. It wasn't the kind of laughter born from joy. It was the sound of power amusing itself. Suits leaned back in their chairs, fingers pointing, mouths wide open as if the moment had already been won. At the center of it all stood a billionaire, confident and untouchable, gesturing lazily toward a blackboard as if the words written on it were nothing more than chalk dust. Across from him, silent and still, stood a poor boy with a plastic bag slung over his shoulder, his entire life compressed into thin, crinkled plastic, his eyes fixed not on the men laughing, but on the words they thought were meaningless. The room held its breath without realizing it. Something invisible tightened in the air, like the seconds before a storm breaks. The boy did not flinch. He did not smile. He did not look away. While the billionaires saw a joke, a spectacle, a moment to reinforce who belonged on which side of the glass, the boy saw something else entirely, an opening. And in that opening, history was about to shift. The meeting room belonged to a multinational investment firm headquartered in a tower so tall it seemed to scrape the sky out of arrogance. This was where deals were signed, companies dismantled, futures rewritten with a pen worth more than most homes. The men in the room were accustomed to being obeyed, admired, feared. They spoke in numbers that ended with too many zeros and laughed at problems most people prayed never to face. The boy had entered by accident, or so they thought. Security had tried to escort him out at first. A child with worn shoes and torn sleeves did not belong on the 20th floor of a building like this. But the billionaire, Marcus Vane, had stopped them. Not out of kindness. Out of boredom. "Wait," Marcus had said, eyes scanning the boy the way one might examine an insect. "Let him stay." That was how the joke began. Someone noticed the board first. A rolling blackboard stood near the glass wall, left over from a presentation earlier that day. On it were written 4 large words in chalk, carefully spaced, written in a language none of the executives recognized. The letters were bold, deliberate. One of the men squinted. "What language is that?" "No idea," another replied. "Looks Eastern European." "Or Russian?" Marcus leaned back, amused. His watch alone could have fed the boy's entire neighborhood for a year. He snapped his fingers. "Kid," he said casually, "you look smart enough. I'll give you $20 million if you can translate that." The room exploded in laughter. $20 million. The number itself was absurd. It wasn't an offer. It was a punchline. The kind of number thrown around by people who never expected to part with it. The men laughed harder when they noticed the boy's bag inside it, empty bottles and scraps of paper. A collector. A nobody. The boy said nothing. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "What's wrong? Cat got your tongue?" He smirked. "Don't worry, it's just a joke. You probably don't even know what $1 million looks like." Still, the boy remained silent, and that silence began to bother them. "What?" Marcus pressed. "You don't even want to try?" Slowly, deliberately, the boy lifted his head. His voice, when it came, was calm, clear, unshaken. "It says," the boy began, the laughter faded not all at once, but unevenly, like lights going out one by one. The boy turned slightly toward the board, reading the chalk not with hesitation, but with familiarity. "It says, America is a very beautiful country." The room froze. Someone scoffed. "That's it?" Marcus chuckled, relieved. "That's your big translation? Congratulations, kid. You've just described the obvious." But the boy wasn't finished. He turned back to them. "In Russian, that sentence is often used sarcastically," he continued. "It's something you say when beauty hides cruelty. When the outside shines, but the inside rots. No one laughed this time. Marcus's smile stiffened. Is that so? Yes, the boy said. It's something my mother used to say. A pause. The word mother landed differently than the rest. Marcus crossed his arms. And where did you learn Russian, HM? From cartoons? My mother was a translator, the boy replied. Before she cleaned offices at night. Before she died. The glass walls no longer felt transparent. They felt like barriers trapping everyone inside. She spoke 5 languages, the boy went on. She said words matter. Because people hide behind them. Marcus straightened. And what are you hiding behind right now? The boy met his eyes. Nothing. For the first time, Marcus felt something unfamiliar crawl up his spine. Uneased. The boy stepped closer to the board. You offered $20 million, he said. But you didn't ask why the words were written there. Marcus frowned. Enlighten us. They were written by a janitor, the boy said. He wrote them during his break. Because he missed home. Because he thought no one here could read them. One of the executives shifted uncomfortably. The joke, the boy continued, is that he was right. Silence crushed the room. Marcus forced a laugh. You're bold. I'll give you that. The boy nodded. Boldness is cheaper than ignorance. That did it. The temperature in the room dropped. The billionaire's face hardened, not angry yet, but wounded in a place money couldn't reach. You think you've made a point? Marcus said. You translated a sentence. Congratulations. The boy looked around the room. At the suits. The screens. The skyline behind them. No, he said softly. I reminded you who you're laughing at. The words hit harder than any insult. Marcus opened his mouth to respond, but for the first time in decades, nothing came out, and in that moment, the joke died. Not with a bang, but with the sound of powerful men realizing they had underestimated the wrong person. No one spoke after that, not immediately. The kind of silence that settled over the room wasn't empty. It was crowded with thoughts no one wanted to voice. Marcus Vane, who had faced hostile takeovers, government inquiries, and billion-dollar losses without breaking eye contact, now found himself staring at a boy whose shoes were frayed at the edges and whose posture carried neither fear nor defiance, only certainty. Marcus cleared his throat. That's very poetic, he said at last, forcing a thin smile. But let's not pretend this is anything more than a clever story. The boy didn't argue. He didn't need to. One of the executives, older, gray-haired, known for his ruthless efficiency, leaned forward. What's your name, son? The boy hesitated, just long enough for the room to notice. Eli, he said. Eli Novak. The name meant nothing to them. But the way he said it, steady, grounded, made it sound like it should. And how old are you, Eli? The executive asked. 14. A murmur rippled through the room. 14? Some of the men had watches older than that. Marcus scoffed softly. So let me get this straight. You're a 14-year-old kid, wandering into private offices, translating Russian proverbs, and lecturing billionaires about morality. I didn't wander, Eli replied. I was invited. A few heads turned slowly back to Marcus. Marcus's jaw tightened. I said you could stay. That doesn't mean. That means you were curious, Eli interrupted, his tone respectful but firm. Curiosity is how people learn. Or unlearn. The audacity of it sent a ripple of irritation through Marcus's chest. He stood up, buttoning his suit jacket as if armor might restore the balance. Fine, Marcus said. Let's play this out. You translated the sentence. You gave it. Context. What now? You expect applause? Eli shook his head. I expect nothing. Then why are you still standing here? Because you made an offer, Eli said. A few men chuckled nervously. Marcus laughed louder. You can't possibly think. I don't think you'll pay me, Eli said calmly. But I do think you'll remember this moment. Marcus tilted his head. Oh, and why is that? Because you don't like being wrong, Eli answered. And right now, you're not sure whether you are. The words landed with surgical precision. One of the younger executives shifted in his chair. Marcus, he said quietly, maybe we should... No, Marcus snapped, holding up a hand. I want to hear this. Go on, kid. Tell us what else you know. Eli took a slow breath. This wasn't bravado. This was preparation. I know this building used to be a public library, he said. Several executives blinked. It was demolished after a private equity buyout, Eli continued. The books were sold by weight. The staff got 2 weeks' notice. The gray-haired executive stiffened. How would you know that? My mother worked here, Eli replied. Before it was this. A sharp inhale cut through the room. She cleaned the floors, Eli said. At night. After she lost her job translating documents for a subcontractor you acquired and shut down. Marcus felt a pressure behind his eyes he didn't recognize. She used to tell me what the paper said, Eli went on. Contracts. Fine print. Clauses that sounded harmless but ruined lives. She taught me languages because she said words are weapons when only one side understands them. The room felt smaller now. Marcus exhaled slowly. You came here for revenge? Eli shook his head. I came here because security downstairs asked me what language the board was written in. They were laughing. That detail hit harder than any accusation. I realized, Eli said, that nothing had changed. Marcus looked around. For the first time, the men surrounding him didn't look amused. They looked exposed. You think we're villains, Marcus said quietly. Asterisk. I think you're comfortable, Eli replied. And comfort makes people careless. A pause. Then Marcus laughed, but this time it wasn't dismissive. It was sharp, curious. You're impressive, he admitted. Dangerously so. Eli shrugged. I read a lot. Marcus walked closer, stopping just a few feet away. The height difference was obvious, the power imbalance less so. You know, Marcus said, lowering his voice, I could have security escort you out right now. No one would remember your name by tomorrow. Eli nodded. I know, and yet you're still talking. Yes. Why? Eli met his gaze. Because you offered $20 million. Marcus smiled faintly. Still stuck on the joke? No, Eli said, stuck on the promise. The room leaned in. You see, Eli continued, my mother used to say that when powerful people joke about money, it's because they've forgotten what it costs. Marcus's fingers curled slightly. I don't need $20 million, Eli said. But you do need to know what that sentence really means. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Enlighten me. Eli turned back to the board one last time. It's not praising America, he said. It's asking a question. He faced them again. If this country is so beautiful, Eli said softly, why are people like my mother invisible inside it? No one answered. Because no one could. Marcus felt something shift, something uncomfortable and unfamiliar. Not guilt. Not shame. Responsibility. He straightened. What do you want, Eli? The question echoed. Eli thought for a moment. Then, I want you to pay attention. Marcus studied him. Really studied him. Not as a curiosity. Not as a threat. As a variable he hadn't accounted for. Sit, Marcus said suddenly, pulling out a chair. The room froze. Eli hesitated. That wasn't a request, Marcus added. Slowly, Eli sat. Marcus turned to the room. Meeting's not over, he said. But the agenda just changed. The executives exchanged glances. No one objected. Marcus faced Eli again. You wanted me to remember this moment, he said. Congratulations. He paused. Now let's see what you do with it. The room did not return to normal after that because normal no longer existed. Marcus Vane remained standing, one hand resting on the back of the chair beside Eli as if anchoring himself. The executives, who moments ago had been laughing, whispering, or scrolling discreetly on their tablets, now sat unnaturally still. It was the stillness of people who knew something irreversible had begun, but did not yet know its cost. Everyone put your devices down, Marcus said. A few hesitated. Then, one by one, tablets were placed face down on the table. Phones slid into pockets. The glass walls reflected their movements like a silent jury. Marcus looked at Eli. You wanted my attention. You have it. Now explain something to me. Eli met his gaze. What? Why you? Marcus asked. Why are you standing here instead of 100 other kids with stories just as painful? Eli didn't answer immediately. He looked down at his hands small, scarred, the knuckles rough as if they'd seen more labor than childhood should allow. Because most people are taught to be quiet, Eli said finally, and I wasn't. A faint frown crossed Marcus's face. Who taught you not to be? My mother, Eli replied, and the people she translated for before she lost her job. One of the executives spoke up, his voice cautious. Translated for whom? Journalists, Eli said, labor advocates. Sometimes lawyers who couldn't afford professional agencies. She worked at night for cash. She said truth travels faster when it doesn't ask permission. Marcus exhaled slowly. And where is she now? The question was simple. The answer was not. She died last winter, Eli said. The words did not tremble, but the room did. A woman near the end of the table swallowed hard. Another man looked away entirely. Journalists, Eli said, labor advocates. Sometimes lawyers who couldn't afford professional agencies. She worked at night for cash. She said truth travels faster when it doesn't ask permission. Marcus exhaled slowly. And where is she now? The question was simple. The answer was not. She died last winter, Eli said. The words did not tremble, but the room did. A woman near the end of the table swallowed hard. Another man looked away entirely. I'm sorry, Marcus said, and for the first time, it didn't sound rehearsed. Eli nodded once. So was she. She used to say she wished she'd had more time. Silence fell again, but this time, it wasn't confrontational. It was heavy. Marcus straightened and walked back toward his chair. He did not sit. You said you don't want the money, he said. But you came here knowing I'd offer it. Yes. Why? Because money makes people honest, Eli replied. Not because they want it, but because they're afraid of what it reveals about them. Marcus let out a short, humorless laugh. You're saying this was a test? I'm saying, Eli corrected, that you turned it into one. Marcus leaned against the table, folding his arms. And how am I doing? Eli hesitated. Be honest, Marcus said. You owe me nothing else. Eli looked around the room. At the suits? The watches. The polished confidence that had seemed invincible an hour ago. You're listening, he said. That's more than most. A few executives shifted uncomfortably. That was not the compliment they wanted to hear. Marcus nodded slowly. Listening isn't enough. No, Eli agreed. But it's where responsibility starts. Marcus studied him again, this time not with curiosity, but calculation. You're dangerous, Marcus said quietly. Do you know that? Yes, Eli said. So is silence. The air felt charged now, like the seconds before a storm breaks. Marcus turned to the gray-haired executive. Pull the files on the Eastern Translation subcontract, he ordered. Full acquisition trail, layoffs, severance disputes. The man blinked. Marcus, that was years ago. Now, Marcus repeated. The executive nodded and stood, leaving the room quickly. Marcus turned back to Eli. You didn't come here just to speak, he said. You came here to change something. Yes. What? Eli didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into the worn backpack he'd been carrying since he walked in. The room tensed instinctively, but he only pulled out a folded stack of papers. He placed them on the table. What's this? Marcus asked. Translations, Eli said. Unpaid ones. People my mother helped. Eviction notices, employment contracts, medical billing disputes. Marcus flipped through them slowly. Each page was marked with handwritten notes in the margins, corrections, clarifications, warnings. These are accurate, Marcus said, surprised despite himself. She taught me to be careful, Eli replied. Mistakes hurt people who can't afford them. Marcus closed the stack and looked up. You want me to fix all of this? No, Eli said. I want you to see it. The executives exchanged uneasy glances. Marcus tapped the papers once against the table. You're asking me to confront consequences I never had to look at. Yes. And if I refuse? Eli met his eyes again. Then nothing changes. The simplicity of it unsettled Marcus more than any threat could have. Marcus turned slowly, surveying the room. How many of you knew the library was here before this building? Only one hand rose. How many of you read the subcontractor reports before approving the cuts? No hands? Marcus nodded grimly. That's what I thought. He looked back at Eli. You've done something reckless today. Yes. And brave. Eli shrugged. Those are often the same thing. Marcus let out a breath and finally sat down. Here's what's going to happen, he said, his voice steady but different, stripped of performance. We're going to review every acquisition tied to outsourced translation and legal services in the last 10 years. Several executives stiffened. We're going to reopen severance cases where errors occurred, Marcus continued. And we're going to fund a program independent to provide free translation services for workers involved in disputes with companies like ours. The room erupted in murmurs. That could cost, someone began. I know, Marcus said sharply. That's why it matters. He turned to Eli. Will that satisfy you? Eli thought carefully. It's a start. Marcus nodded. Then here's my part of the bargain. He reached into his jacket pocket and removed a sleek black card, placing it on the table in front of Eli. This isn't $20 million, Marcus said. It's access to my office, my team, my time. Eli looked at the card, but did not touch it. And why would you do that? Eli asked. Marcus leaned forward. Because I don't trust myself to remember this moment alone. The room went quiet again, but this time the silence felt earned. Eli finally picked up the card. I'll use it, he said. Carefully. Marcus allowed himself a small, genuine smile. I expected nothing less. The gray-haired executive returned, files in hand, his expression strained. Marcus, there are discrepancies. Marcus took the files without looking away from Eli. There always are. He turned to the room one last time. Meeting adjourned. The executives rose slowly, as if waking from a long, uncomfortable dream. One by one, they filed outcasting glances at the boy who had undone an entire afternoon of certainty with nothing but words. When the room was empty, Marcus and Eli remained. You know, Marcus said quietly, this won't be easy. Eli nodded. Nothing worth doing is. Marcus studied him for a long moment. What will you do now? Eli slung his backpack over his shoulder. Go back to school. Marcus blinked. School? Yes, Eli said. I have a history test tomorrow. Marcus laughed softly, incredulously. Get out of here, he said. Before I start thinking the world still makes sense, Eli paused at the door. Mr. Vane? Yes? You asked me why me, Eli said. It's because people like you don't expect someone like me to speak. Marcus nodded slowly. That was a mistake, Eli added. Then he walked out. Marcus Vane remained seated long after the door closed, staring at the empty chair where certainty used to sit. The building emptied faster than Marcus Vane expected. By the time the last executive elevator chimed and disappeared downward, the upper floors of Vane Global were left with a strange, echoing quiet one that did not belong to power, but to aftermath. The kind of silence that followed confession. Marcus remained alone in the boardroom long after Eli had gone. The city outside glowed in layers of glass and light, but for the first time in years, Marcus did not feel taller than it. He felt inside it, accountable to it. He picked up the stack of translations again. This time, he didn't skim. He read. Every page was a door. And every door opened into a life that had been altered by a single unchecked decision, often his own. Names he did not recognize. Dates he did. Marginal notes that warned of clauses hidden like traps. Sentences that meant survival if understood correctly, and disaster if they weren't. Marcus closed his eyes. For years he had called this efficiency. Tonight, it felt like negligence wearing a tailored suit. He pressed the intercom. Cancel my evening. A pause. All of it, sir? All of it. Yes, Mr. Vane. Marcus stood, rolled up his sleeves, and carried the papers to his private office. He spread them across his desk like evidence in a trial that had been postponed for too long. Then he opened his laptop and began making calls. Not to assistants. Not to PR. To people. Eli did not go straight home. He stopped at the public library instead, the old one. The one squeezed between a pawn shop and a closed-down grocery store. The automatic doors wheezed open like tired lungs, and the smell of paper and dust greeted him like an old friend. Ms. Calder, the librarian, looked up from the desk. You're late, she said gently. I know, Eli replied. I'm sorry. She studied his face more closely. Rough day? Eli smiled faintly. Long one. He returned to the same table where his mother had once spread dictionaries across the surface like a battlefield. The memory tightened his chest, but it didn't hurt the way it used to. It felt purposeful. He pulled out his notebook and wrote, not about Marcus Vane. About systems. About language. About how power moved faster than truth, but truth, when spoken clearly, traveled farther. His phone buzzed once. Unknown number. He stared at it for a moment, then answered, Yes? It's Marcus, the voice said. Eli exhaled slowly. I wondered when you'd call. I'm not calling to argue, Marcus said, or to impress you. Good, Eli replied. I don't have time for either. Marcus hesitated. I wanted you to know. I reopened the cases. Eli closed his notebook. All of them? Everyone tied to that program. Some of the settlements were wrong. Some were unethical. A few were illegal. And we're fixing them, Marcus said, quietly, properly. Eli was silent. Marcus continued, I've also authorized the foundation, independent board, external oversight, no branding. Why no branding? Eli asked. Marcus gave a dry chuckle. Because if I put my name on it, it becomes about redemption. This isn't that. What is it then? Responsibility. Eli nodded to himself. That matters. There was another pause. You didn't take the money, Marcus said, but you didn't reject the work. I didn't, Eli agreed. Why? Because words can protect people, Eli said, but only if someone powerful is willing to stand behind them. Marcus absorbed that. I won't waste that, he said. Don't, Eli replied. People will notice. After the call ended, Eli stayed seated for a long time watching dust float through the warm yellow light of the library lamps. He felt tired, but not hollow. For the first time since his mother died, the world felt adjustable. The fallout was not immediate, but it was unstoppable. Within weeks, legal departments across multiple subsidiaries were forced to audit translation practices. Quiet settlements multiplied. Letters of apology were sent without press releases. Workers who had been evicted, fired, or silenced received revised documents and leverage. Some cried. Some were angry. Some didn't believe it at first. But slowly, something shifted. Inside Vane Global, executives began reading reports instead of approving summaries. Translation services were no longer outsourced blindly. Language specialists were hired in-house. Contracts changed tone. And somewhere deep inside the corporate bloodstream, fear began to lose its grip. 3 months later, Marcus stood in a much smaller room. No cameras, no audience. Across from him sat a dozen people, immigrants, laborers, advocates. Eli sat among them, quieter than most. Marcus didn't stand at the head of the table. He sat with them. "I won't pretend I understand all of this," Marcus said. "But I understand that I benefited from not having to." He slid a folder across the table. "This is a proposal for a permanent language equity program. You will run it, not me." A woman flipped through the pages. "You're giving us control?" "Yes." "And if we criticize your company?" Marcus met her eyes. "Then we listen." The room was silent, then alive with murmurs. Eli watched closely. Later, as people filed out, Marcus approached him. "You didn't speak," Marcus observed. "I didn't need to," Eli replied. "You did," Marcus nodded. "I still think about that day." "So do I," Marcus hesitated. "You never told me what the sentence on the board said." Eli smiled. "You already know." Marcus thought for a moment, then nodded slowly. "America is a very beautiful country," he said softly, "but only when it's understood." Eli's smile widened. Years later, the story would be told incorrectly. Some would say the billionaire gave a boy $20 million. Others would say it was staged, or exaggerated, or a publicity stunt. They would be wrong. The truth was quieter. A boy translated a sentence. A man finally listened. And an entire system built on the assumption that silence meant consent was forced to confront the power of a voice it never expected to hear. Eli never became famous. He became precise. He studied linguistics, then law, then both at once. He helped people read the fine print and taught them to ask better questions. Marcus Vane remained wealthy, but he stopped being comfortable. And that discomfort changed more lives than money ever could. Because sometimes the most expensive thing a powerful person can give is attention. And sometimes the bravest thing a poor boy can do is speak clearly when the room expects him to stay silent.